Somebody I consider one of my favorite people in the space, somebody who I call you a brother from the space just because we've done stuff together in some sense. I'm quite literally wearing your artwork
Oh
on
man.
me right now. I'm a collector. I consider myself a student of you, actually. You fueled me to go and actually learn how to launch a generative art project on chain uh because of art blocks. I think start here. Who are you? Intro might be best here.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, man. I really appreciate it. I'm Eric. I'm also known as Snowfro on Twitter. I'm known as Art on Blockchain. Should probably consolidate those things. Um, I'm the founder of a platform called Art Blocks, but I've been around crypto for a really long time. I started collecting digital art in June of 2017 when I discovered the CryptoPunks project. It was a huge kind of unlock for me to understand that you could own something digitally. And to this day, I mean, we're approaching my eighth anniversary of being a digital art collector in this sense. I am just as excited, if not more, about what it means for humans to kind of own things digitally, improve ownership of something digitally, and support digital creators. Um, and yeah, it's been the craziest 8 years I could imagine. I mean, I never in my life would have thought years would have been like this. The first few years were actually pretty calm. Try not to get in trouble because I was on Discord too much, with my family. But ever since launching Art Blocks, everything has certainly kind of exploded and gotten out of control. And now we're kind of in a chill period. And yeah, I mean, really excited to talk to you, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
things have exploded. I wasn't as early to NFTs, but I do even remember, early 2001 punks Discord vibes that just seemed it was such a close knit place to be and talk and meet people, and a lot of those characters still exist today.
Yeah.
Um, careers have, I mean, the careers that have come out of that Discord are notable. I would say that Discord has spawned probably some of the biggest company founders, some of the biggest traders and collectors in the space. But that was kind of like ground zero for, I would say, like the generative art movement in some sense.
I mean, it felt like in some ways like a weird little private chat back in the day because I mean there weren't that many people in there, and we would just sit there and just shoot the shit and talk about all the things that were on our mind and all the different ways that we thought this technology could be exciting. And I generally focused on art stuff, although I love the concept of DeFi. I love the concept of like all these other things that the technology brings to the table. But everybody kind of brought their own spin. Everybody brought their own hype. Everyone brought their own bags as well. I mean, it was just like this ongoing conversation. And I like to share with people there was at some points like a full week without a single message in that Discord. I mean, that's how kind of like slow it was. And usually the first message after a delay would be why the hell are you guys paying $200 for these stupid cartoon characters? And so that's all it took to get me fired up and be like, well, let me tell you about these little cartoon characters, and let me also tell you about like this concept of like generative art and this concept of digital ownership. And led to onboarding a ton of people into crypto, and hopefully in with good security practices. Although at the time they weren't, at least for me, fully refined or extended as they are today. Um, but yeah, it was that's where I've met most of the people that I interact with, and I'd say we do see a lot of people come in and out of this space, and that's just kind of the nature of it, especially when there's kind of bubble-ish kind of feelings. But a lot of those people are still here today, and
Yeah.
it's because I think there was a certain level of nerdiness, a certain level of like weirdness you had to be to even kind of spend time in those spaces, especially kind of as an adult. Discord, I had never heard of Discord until the CryptoPunks, and I know a lot of people use it for video game servers, and so like, but I was 38 years old. I think I was kind of past that point in my life. So the people that were there that were asking questions were a unique breed, and it's really amazing to go to events and still kind of run into them
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. I feel like the energy back then very different, obviously, because of I think the monetary side of things has changed drastically. Um, but there was almost, for me at least, like I remember when I bought my Chromie Squiggle, we'll use that as an example. When I bought that, that was like a blind trade of trust with D's. I had met him in the Punks Discord.
No way.
And no, I swear to God, this is how I bought my only Squiggle that I own is D's was in the Discord. I was like, I want to buy one. He like posted online, like, I'm gonna sell, I'm selling one. And I messaged him in the Discord and I was like, yo, can I buy your fuzzy? And he's like, cool. And we negotiated a price. I think it was 1 ETH. And I was like, should I just send you the money? And I just sent it to him. And I was like, I hope this guy said, like, I was like, damn, I think I just got scammed. But I that was like the energy back then of like, it's such a close knit like reputation. You can kind of get to know these people. There was way different. I would never do that today. Never in a million years would
No,
never
no,
do
no. It's
that.
very different. You can't even respond to like a friendly hello these days. But man,
No.
where would we be without D's today? You know, like it's people like him. I mean that's the perfect prototype of that kind of, you know, nerdy persona that kind of was curious about this and saw something here really early on. And man, I have so much respect and appreciation for that guy. I'm so excited that that's how you got your squiggle. That's exciting. That's cool.
I'll never sell it. It's it's one of those things that uh I think a lot of people talk about like like there people buy cars and like, oh, it's a dead man's car. Like I will own that car till the day I die. And people
Yeah.
talk about vaulting stuff and like I'll never sell it. I genuinely like I will never like that is something I will like hand down to my kids and be like, I don't care if it's worth $1 million or it's worth absolutely nothing. It is one of those things I'm like, I know I will pass that on. So it's a cool moment. The
I mean, that
provenance behind
speaks.
that's cool too.
Yeah, I mean, the provenance is awesome, like from D's. But it also speaks to kind of, obviously, we're in a very financial space, and that's just kind of how it is. Also, the art world is very financialized, even though it kind of plays under a different cover. But like, I think one thing that I think, I don't know, my goal in creating things for people is to get as many people in the world to like touch my work, whether they own it or whether they interact with it or whether they have like a T-shirt on that has it on there, and that feeling that you just shared is not, it's like we don't talk about like the potential sentimental value that comes with these things, and that sentimental value could mean a number of things. It could be the message of the artist, but it could also be like the situation in which you got it and the situation, what it opens up from the community. We were on a punks spaces last week or 2 weeks ago, gosh, I can't remember, and it was incredible just how many people bought a punk specifically because they just wanted to be part of that community. And those ships sail for a lot of people financially, and so as that ship sails, because it's really expensive to buy a punk, or it might be expensive to buy a squiggle, that doesn't mean that like you can't be part of that just because you don't own it. And so to the people that own them and hold them, and not just squiggles, punks, whatever, everything out there, like I hope that it brings a satisfaction beyond, and I truly believe that it brings a satisfaction beyond like the value element for a vast majority of people. And I guess that the other side of it, it's like it's bittersweet, like the yearning that people have when they're like, man, like I wish I had a squiggle, I can't afford a squiggle. I wish I had a punk, I can't afford a punk. On the one hand, it's incredibly flattering and humbling, and on the other hand, it's kind of like, oh man, I wish like you were there to buy them for $20, because it's just, it would have been a non-discretionary decision to just spend $20 or
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
time changes things.
It is one of the it's funny because I'll have I actually have my closest family friend, the family's building a house in Arizona. And they were like, "Hey Hunter, like we have, we're traditional art collectors. We want to put up some screens. What should we buy?" And they're like, "Well, we'll spend a certain amount of money." And we were going through them, and I can tell you this: the first one that there was no argument over or anything was a squiggle. So again, like
Oh shit.
it falls into that like, okay, like they see it, it's recognizable, it's iconic. It falls into that like I don't know, it's just the like perfect it's like the perfect combination of like all these little things that I think connects to people where they're like, "Oh yeah, like I need that. Like I want to collect that and have it." Um I think punks are a little bit harder, right? Because it's like an actual face and little bit different skew of art. Um but yeah, no, I mean, the squiggle is just an iconic thing. You mentioned, which is interesting, how much how many ways it can like impact people and like they see it and where you can place it. Where it's been is crazy at this point. The jersey I'm wearing, it's been on the front of a professional soccer team or football club in England. That also means that it has been in FIFA. It has been in the
That's
video
right.
game,
In the
EA
video.
Sports.
Yeah.
There's a squiggle. You can go play. I've walked into New York flats of people playing and seen a squiggle on their TV in a video.
Safe. Yeah.
Like like you never expected that. Do you ever expect that you have art in a in
No, I no,
FIFA?
no, like, I didn't expect any of this. All of this was inadvertent, including that kind of sweet I do think the squiggle kind of hits a sweet spot in between the complexity of, like, heavy art, that we are seeing a tremendous growth in collectorship of. I don't mean growth of collectors. In fact, I still think the collector pool is maybe decreasing. Last couple of weeks have been promising, but growth and maturity of people and the way they talk about art and are able to embrace kind of highly um, like heavy topics that art brings to the table. I mean, especially if we started as video gamers or, like in my case, comic book collectors. I do think it kind of provides a really nice entry point into being able to have a conversation about art. Like my 5-year-old could do it. Yeah, I'm sure. And this is great. And I love it when people continue to this day, like reply and say, like, I'll draw you a squiggle for $5. But like it hit kind of a sweet spot in between the PFP and kind of the heavy, not just generative art, but the art space. I do think that that is actually kind of who I am, right? Like I'm not, I'm a Swatch guy, right? Like I don't like, I've been offered to do some really nice collaborations with really high-end watch companies. And I'm like, how much is the watch going to be? 25K. Yeah, no, like I would love to see it. I would love to maybe even own it, but like, that's just not who I am.
Do you
And the
consider
squiggles kind of,
yourself a man of the people?
I would, I mean, it's, especially the past few years have been incredibly humbling, both in good ways and in incredibly like difficult ways. And the squiggle was 10,000 editions because I never thought it would ever sell out. Like the idea that somebody could be like passionate or excited about like a little colorful gradient line is, uh, I mean, that there's so many layers there of what it's meant to represent on top of just like it being the first, or I guess technically not the absolute first generative art piece on Art Blocks. But yeah, I think there's like a happy medium there between the PFP and the more serious, art collections. And I love that spot. I think that's a really sweet spot. We have a few really big collectors that kind of went ham on the Minter early on. I mean, literally, I was begging him to stop because I was like, "You guys, this is all going to go to zero. What are you doing?" And I respect them for that. I appreciate them for that. And then if you look at distribution beyond kind of some of those really big collectors, there's just a tremendous amount of people that just own a single, 2 or 3 squiggles, and I think that's really exciting too. Like there's a lot of people that this is their PFP. I get on space it. I mean, like to your point, I had no idea that anything like this was going to happen. This squiggle is actually from the the Samsung Art Store. So literally, if you have a subscription to the Samsung Art Store, you can go to the Art Blocks partner page and pull up a Chromie squiggle. I want to get this in front of as many people as possible. I've been staying. I travel a lot, and so every time I go to a hotel room, I turn on YouTube because I have a live stream of the Chromie squiggle. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I'm basically paying a server to live stream a Chromie squiggle 24/7 in high resolution, because I think that everything that's ever been made as an NFT is public art. It's generative, or it's public art. It's seen in its native state if you have a cell phone. Like a sculpture at a park, like every single artwork that exists is available to anybody all the time. And so what I'm really kind of trying to think about is simmering down how to make it as available and as accessible, not just within our ecosystem, but more broadly. And so, I start searching Chromie squiggle on YouTube, and like, you have to get all the way to like the L of squiggle before it pops up. Like there's like a million things that pop up before that. My dream is that you start typing in CHRO, and then it
Right.
appears. What that means is not that like the 100 or 200 or maybe 3,000 holders of Chromie squiggle are accessing it, but maybe it's like it's bigger than that. So my kids walk into a room, they see a TV, they just put it on there. I don't ask them to do it. They're just excited about it. And every television since 2012 probably has YouTube on it. If it doesn't, it has a Roku box on it, and
Right.
making it as accessible and available to everybody is I think my dream. And seeing it on a jersey, seeing it on a video game, like really checked some boxes there. I'm not a big sports person, a big soccer fan, a big football fan. I am a big fan of kind of being able to spread a message and share my work. And I'm excited about any opportunities that come around. Beyond that, art institutions, as an example, have been a really nice feature of the last couple of years.
Yeah. Two things from that I think are kind of crazy to hear and I think are worth noting. One, most artists would be like, I'm going out to build my name, and you are thinking of this of building the the collection. Like, it's not about Snowfro, it's not about our our on blockchain, it's not about Eric. It is about Chromie Squiggle.
It's
And
I
and
would
and I
even push back and say it's not even about, it's about this ecosystem as a whole. I mean, I'm excited about the Chromie Squiggle. I'm very proud of it, of course. But like, it's thinking about what it means for all the people that are here, especially the ones that are still here, even through like all the ups and downs, and making them feel rewarded. And obviously financial rewards are one way, and that's really hard to sustain, as we've seen with every other kind of platform. But sentimental rewards and like making them feel special or important, throwing up someone's Chromie Squiggle on the live stream for the day, I think is a way that I can kind of just give little hits of dopamine to people that are otherwise kind of despondent looking at Twitter and kind of watching people complain all the time. So, but the whole ecosystem as a whole, I think, is my weight on my shoulders. Every digital artist that's out there, focus on generative because that's my passion. But even well beyond generative, it's supporting the digital creator and the digital collector and understanding what the future looks like for both.
Love that. Another note there, which I thought was interesting, is noting the point that NFTs are inherently art that's available to anyone, anywhere, at any time. My question I was actually going to ask is, what does on-chain art offer that art in a museum doesn't offer? And I think that's a very good point. I don't know if there's anything to add to that, but the question then starts to become, I think, for some people and traditional people who, if they are watching, who have never collected NFT, they're like, well, why didn't you drop this as, prints or in a different medium and try to get them in museums? Like, why go and choose on chain?
Man, there's a lot of reasons. Okay, so first of all, imagine that I was bold enough to think that 10,000 people were going to buy a Chromie Squiggle. So I went out and I pre-rendered and pre-printed 10,000 Chromie Squiggles and then set up a little shop and asked people to come and buy these prints. Like, functionally, the distribution mechanisms that the blockchain provides are just insanely more effective and efficient in reaching not just an audience quicker, but if the print's $50 and it costs $200 to ship it to Europe, and then they have to pay tariffs and all this weird stuff that they have to do when they import stuff, or you can have it instantly. It can be a lot less expensive if I don't actually have to go and fill my car with boxes to go ship. So just the distribution mechanism alone is incredibly powerful. Second of all, the idea that it's generated on demand, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs in the last few years about whether people like the on-demand generative minting experience, where people that minted Squiggles did not know what they were going to get, versus preferring to just wait for the secondary and pick the ones that they want. And both of them are valid. In fact, I collect on collections that I get really excited about. I collect both ways. I like to generate a few mints that are kind of randomly made, and then because I have this sickness to complete sets for stuff, I then go on the secondary and then try to complete sets or find the ones that really stand out and kind of jump on those. So the on-chain mechanic also, to me, there's obviously this can be a little bit controversial sometimes, but because to this day, paper is the thing that has survived the test of time more than just about any other medium that exists, and technology generally can be pretty ephemeral. The idea that we may be building the future financial system of the world on top of these blockchains does make me feel like it's super durable, and the idea that the Ethereum blockchain is first and foremost immutable, unchangeable, and second of all is promising durability and longevity, feels really powerful to me. And so, again, nothing is guaranteed. We look at the Ethereum blockchain as lasting forever. That there's everything from black swan events to shifts in sentiment towards certain technologies, towards I don't know, just new methods of distributing information that could alter the course of how we look at blockchains. And then I guess finally, something that I think is more nuanced, but I am really proud of and really excited about is that like specifically with art blocks, we created a set of constraints, and constraint is really good and also can be pretty bad in some cases. You have like the most elite fully on-chain art, which just uses a smart contract and it doesn't have anything else but the smart contract to generate the work. And I love that. Autoglyphs to me is just like foundational to all of this. But the constraint and limitation there is pretty significant. There's only so much that you can do with it. By putting the algorithm on chain, but then allowing for some external dependencies, most of which have now been put on chain anyways. And the Chromie squiggle, when you view it on Art Blocks, is 100% pulled from the blockchain, including the template, the HTML template, the library, everything. This idea of resolution agnosticism, like I am a technology person that will buy, I will like if I was buying a early 2000s car, I would put a significant premium on one that did not have navigation and did not have like the slow computer stuff that they did at the time.
Yep.
In fact, they call them strippers. There's like certain cars that are rare that if the person optioned them without the navigation and all that stuff, and so it's just got all the knobs and stuff. Today they're worth more because if you turn on navigation on a car that's 22 years old, it's painful and miserable, and you don't want. To me, it detracts from the experience. I'm using that as an example to say everything that's been put on Art Blocks, especially Art Blocks Curated or within the Art Blocks kind of umbrella of Curated, Presents, Factory, etc. We had an additional constraint to artists that they would make their work resolution agnostic, which means that today, or when we started Art Blocks and everything was kind of HD and starting to touch into 4K, everything that was generated would fill the screen pixel perfect resolution without it needing any kind of upsampling or dealing with compression. When we're at 8K and we can run browsers in 8K, you will be able to do that. When we're at 128K, you will be able to see a Chromie squiggle. Every pixel will be exactly where it was intended to be. And so if you look at GIFs or even just like, video works from the 1970s and 80s where like, if it's not viewed on that cathode ray tube television, it actually doesn't feel, it's just not that enjoyable to like view those old video artworks on like a flat panel monitor.
Yep.
These works are meant to scale also with technology. So after like being someone that has generally try to get a new iPhone every 2 or 3 years and try to stay on top of like, whatever. I just really like technology and seeing how outdated things can get. That little tiny feature that created so much constraint on Art Blocks and a lot of frustration with creators because it's like a pain in the butt to make sure your work is resolution agnostic. I think long term, this is what's so powerful about this technology is that it allows us to have a central permissionless source to access the original version of that, not a server, not a whatever. It's just purely from the blockchain. You can access the entirety of a resolution agnostic work that even if the Ethereum blockchain doesn't last forever in the way that we see it today, it's hard for me to imagine a world where the Ethereum blockchain is not archival and that you cannot access the information on it. And yes, it might be a zoo trying to figure out who owns what at that point. Like it could get a little bit.
Oh God, I don't want to think about that. Let's not think about that.
But like the art lives on, and it's public art and it remains public. And some institutions have collected it specifically because they're public art institutions and they want to celebrate the idea that it is public art. The Moody Center here in Houston is an example of that. They have a public art collection, one of the most exciting ones for me, one of the most inspirational ones. And they collected a Chromie squiggle because they saw it as a public artwork and they wanted to include it in their public art installation. So to me, the combination of all that, the constraint that comes with it, resolution agnosticism, the distribution mechanism, like, no, I don't think I can wake up one morning and be like, yeah, I'm just going to go back to like the way that it was done before. Like there's no bone in my body that makes me just be like, yeah, I wish the mania didn't happen or wasn't as intense because I think we'd all be more functional these days and maybe less tired. But like every single thing about it beyond that to me is like incredibly powerful and I'm extremely bullish about it. And I don't want to collect digital art that's not using blockchain technology. I just don't have a desire to do it. If it's a really great artist and I really love them, I will do it. But like it does feel like it's missing something to me not to be able to share it with the rest of the world and just stick it in my wall. And the only people that will ever see it are the people that come to my house. That is,
you can't have millions of people come to your house. That is an interesting way to look at that. If you were to do it all over again, would you still do art blocks, would you still do Ethereum? Would you still do it the same way? Like today, like, you woke up, Chromie schools didn't exist. Would you do it the exact same way? Or have you seen stuff that you're like, if I could have done it, if I could have done that, or this is interesting. I'm curious.
Yeah. No. I don't know. I mean, because it was all so unexpected. Like, yes, Ethereum, because Ethereum's what got me excited about this in the first place. And I think by the time I released Art Blocks, if there had been another blockchain that was as capable, and kind of like 2020, 2019, when I was like really getting serious about it, maybe it would have made sense. In fact, the very original Art Blocks was its own blockchain. Like the original concept of Art Blocks was
Really,
a
I
blockchain.
actually didn't know that.
Every project was a masternode, and like you basically paid to have your art. I mean, it was really out there, really wild. But very quickly after that, I was like, wait a minute, like the blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain provides us all that. I think maybe my biggest thing that I'd kind of want to reconsider is like I created art blocks as a way for artists to release generative art in a way that they didn't have access to in the past, that didn't really make sense, and that you really kind of had to like ingrain in them like what the beauty of this was. It then became a generative art platform. Like, like we got way more people interested in releasing on art blocks than I could literally manage myself. And then Jeff came on, and then the team started growing.
Right.
And so my original intent was to facilitate people in the generative medium that had traditionally not had a really great way to distribute their work and to kind of share their work, to let them do that. But then it turned into this like, highly curated art platform that I'm very proud of. But that was not on my bingo card. Like that was not in any way part of my expectation. I thought it was going to be like I don't know, like an OpenSea kind of thing where it's like you self-serve it. Like at some point I'd like to scale it to where it would have been just self-service, and you just come and do the thing and you just use the tech that I created for you. But I got very proud and passionate about like the work that actually started coming into art blocks. Like the artists that started releasing on art blocks were people that I had been following for a long time. They were my heroes, like my literal artistic heroes growing up, and or over the last 12 years, because I didn't know about anything until I was about 30. And so it's like you're torn, because on the one hand, you want to make it easy and accessible for everybody to use this technology because it clearly had a product market fit using the Ethereum blockchain. On the other hand, you want to respect and revere these like highly talented, God level artists that I had been following that inspired art blocks in the first place. And so, that first year was really tough because, it's like every step of the way, it was like, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. If you didn't make the additions big enough, there'd be a massive gas war. If you made the additions too big, then people would, say that it was like
greed,
extractive or greedy or whatever. And, I think what's really important is to understand, it's like art blocks, there was a tremendous amount of primary revenue generated, of which art blocks made 10%, which is incredible. I think, for especially for, and kind of an open platform in the way that we were kind of looking at it. But we were just trying to do what we intended to do, is make this technology available to people. And all of a sudden, the intensity of the collector base, which I'm not saying they're wrong in being concerned about dilution or being concerned, but like, it's like, that's not like, I guess this is where I stand my ground. Like, I just like, that's not why I created it. So I appreciate that people like this product. I appreciate that people are excited about this product, but like, I don't want to change my vision. And I definitely think that we made some mistakes along the way, and I'm happy to own them. But I will say this, like, if you look back to 2017, when I first came up with the idea, from a vision perspective of like letting creators release work in this mechanism, that hasn't changed. And there's been a lot of shiny objects that have come and go. We've had to like sober up to the reality of the market, of like whether people are buying or not. People are buying more when they can buy something for lower than they can sell it for. It's very important to me that I'm not creating a distribution mechanism for secondary sales of art. Like, I do think that it makes sense, while it may not bring speculation-based collectors to the platform to sell it at kind of a consensus agreed upon fully on-chain market price, which is what auctions do. It's like we had a drop, and 90% of it went to miners and 10% of it went to the artist. And it's like, it felt shitty for the artist. It felt shitty for art blocks. It felt shitty, even a lot of the collectors, because they paid an ETH total for a mint, but like, it was listed at 0.1 ETH, it was just a shitty feeling. So we come up with like different approaches and alternative ways of mitigating that. But then that is seen as extractive because it's actually kind of reaching a little bit more of a consensus price point, still causes some gas wars. So I don't actually know what I would do differently, other than I think if I would have set out to create art blocks curated, or the art blocks kind of like these almost 500 projects that were created under Presents, Factory Explorations, Collaborations, and Curated, I might have like started with a different mindset of like trying to create something that's meant to be in a glass box versus the mindset of letting people release stuff in a way that I thought they were really going to enjoy releasing. And I've spent a lot of the last few years trying, like, in this kind of battle between this division between like this flagship art blocks curated kind of platform, which is all the things that include even the factory projects that I'm a huge fan of from back in the day, and then this more open model where people can come and release, where nobody gets upset at the other platforms when an artist releases a lot of work. Like, it's just the artist is releasing too much work. And generative artists are very prolific, as you can tell, and we've also inspired from what I consider to be 100, 200 generative artists that I was aware of before art blocks. Now there's thousands and thousands of them. I think we've inspired a lot of engineers to become artists, a lot of artists to become engineers. And so it just compounds the amount of supply there is, and there's just not nearly enough demand. And I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but the last thing that I want to say, because every now and then I get called out for that. Recently, I was called out on a Discord message that I said I relish an oversupply. Like,
oh yeah, yeah.
There's something really interesting to think about here. Crypto is all about that moment. Like, this is the biggest blind spot for crypto as an ecosystem. We're always thinking about that moment. Like, if you're sitting in my seat and you realize that you have this stupid nerdy idea that you didn't think anybody was going to care about, and now there's thousands of people participating in this idea. And also, back in 2021, 2022, we were still on the hopium that the rest of the world was going to come on board, which they did not, right? There is no reason for me to think that we should be basing our arbitrary limitation or expectations of what supply is based on just the number of people. When your Discord and when your collectorship is literally growing 10,000 people per month for like months at a time, there is a moment where you're like, okay, yes, I guess at this very moment there's less people, but I believe in this in the long term, and eventually there will be more people. So oversupply in that sense basically means there's going to be something for someone to buy, not at a scalped price, which is what it turned into on the secondary market in that time. There's always going to be a way for someone to be able to acquire something within this magical vibe that we had both at Artblocks and within the 2021 ecosystem as a whole, without feeling discouraged and being like, oh shit, yeah, that's too rich for me. There's not going to be a membership pass to ever mint on art blocks. There's never going to be a gatekeeping mechanism to mint on art blocks. Why? Because in the moment of over demand, yes, it feels like you should do that. In the moment of less demand, when there's just not that many people around, you're just going to add one more barrier to entry. And as we've seen collectorship plummet like 95% over the course of the last few years. And in the world where it's like we're getting yelled at to make a token and make a membership pass and reduce supply, it's like it's so easy to focus on those things and say, yeah, that was a mistake or that wasn't a mistake. But if you take the whole thing and if you're living inside of that and trying to figure out how to like make artists happy and how to make collectors happy and how to have a team that's functional, I do feel like the anger is a little bit misplaced and not empathetic to like the situation that was going on at the time. And I guess the only thing I can say is my mindset we're still doing the same thing. We're still here. We're still like, we're not selling but a fraction of what we were selling before. We're not supporting artists as much because we can't bring them buyers, because the buyers that are here today are not, there's just not that many of them. I'm a collector, a founder, and an artist. I'm spent. I am broke from collecting. Like, we are all kind of feeling in the same realm. And so this is where my shift has dramatically gone towards, like, I will die on the hill that if we don't get more people, and I don't mean by like telling them that they're about to make a bunch of money, if we don't make a new cohort of people interested and curious about what we're doing, not just in generative, but in Web3 beyond purely speculation, the collections that have already established their prominence are probably just going to be fine. But the concept of why I created art blocks, to let creators and release stuff and into a new market, dies. And that's not exciting to me at all. And so
Right.
bringing new people in becomes like a really important element of all of this. And I don't see enough people doing it. And it's you know, it's hard.
I mean, interestingly, Sotheby's and Christie's, who are the two big auction houses, traditional art has said, okay, there is a stage to be shared here, and we do view generative art, we view art, and specifically art blocks even as, you know, esteemed art, and it's worth putting in front of the, richest and most esteemed collectors as well. Um, do you think it comes from the traditional art world because they're already collecting art and then flipping over and being like, like this is something to buy, or do you think it comes from, like, the next generation of just internet users who say, I
100%. Yeah, that option too. Jack Butcher and I we talk all the time about abundance, and like we're very aligned on abundance. Like it's like, sometimes if I'm releasing a new project, I get messages from squiggle holder collectors. It's like, hey man, like, are you releasing too much work? And it's like, well, I mean, I feel like I'm not deaf to the market, and I'm very sensitive to kind of where we are in the market. I haven't released a thing in the last couple of years and have no desire to release unless I can get traction with more people to collect my work. It's not about the dollar value. It's about, like, can I get hundreds or thousands of people, ideally new people as well, to collect that work? And so it's about this new paradigm for not just art, but how we consume our time on the internet in various different ways, whether it's gaming, whether it's watching YouTube. Like, I mean, this can be a really deep rabbit hole of a conversation, but you like you mentioned traditional art. Like, I don't see my generation and the future generations that have more things competing for their time than people that are 90 years old today, like significantly more things. There's a thing on Twitter the other day. It was a bar chart starting at 1930 and like how people spent their time, and then the internet appeared and then it like shot up to the very top. It's like 50% of our time is on the internet. 25% of our time is with friends. It used to be family, then friends, then church. I mean, it's just like completely upended. Those people like in that are 90 today are leaving significant amounts of their wealth to the museum because there was less things to do. It's like, go to the park, go to the museum, go to a movie. And I don't see our generation and future generations being as philanthropists towards what we call art today. Like, I just don't see that as being like compelled to leave half of your inheritance to like a museum. And I think we can change that. I think museums can change that by being more relevant in what, to me, the first person that kind of drove this idea of internet art through my head is Aaron Wright, from Flamingo DAO and
Yep.
Tribute Labs. It's like,
Yep.
And I mean, we've had healthy discussions because I see it as just art in many, many different ways. And he's like, yeah, it's art, but it's like internet art. Like, it doesn't fit within any other category. This is new internet art. And if you let yourself go, if you let yourself just kind of like understand just the way that we are consuming what I'm calling art today is very different than what how people are consuming art 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and 100 years ago. The way that people are trading art, the way that people are displaying art, the way that people are sharing their art, the way that people are monetizing their art, the way that people are like engaging with community around art. Like, every single thing has done a complete 180 from what it was in the past. And so, I do see this generation, the next generation. There's a bunch of people in their 80s that own Chromie Squiggles too that I've had really very interesting conversations with, like very insightful conversations with. And thinking about like those things, I think, are what are compelling a lot of the institutions today to realize, because again, it's like everyone talks about art as like this pure thing, but in reality, the traditional art world is quite speculative, and there's rules like you can't sell this on the secondary within a certain amount of time of buying this, and like you can't have this unless you're special. I created art blocks in rebellion to the traditional art world. I created art blocks in rebellion to the standards of, many times artists have been like, hey, will art blocks be my exclusive representative? Like, art blocks would probably benefit from that, but like that just feels like it's in contrast to like art blocks can represent you on a project. Art blocks can be here for you and support you and talk through stuff with you. There's so many paradigms from the traditional world that are kind of sneaking back into this internet art world, and I think they'll be fine. But it's so easy to kind of like return to those because that's the status quo and that's what we've seen. But like
Yeah.
everything else in front of us has proven that it's not going to be that way, that it's so much more different. So I think the day that, like, right now there's a generation of gamers that like abhor NFTs, and as you saw recently, there was a beautiful artwork. I forgot the name of the artist, that everybody loved. It got like millions of views, and then like they announced that it was an NFT and got complete like backlash.
Wait, I did not see this. This is
Uh,
insane.
yeah, it sold for a couple of ETH, I think, on one of the websites, and it's like when I don't know if y'all remember, Discord announced they were going to do a MetaMask integration, and like people were like, "Cancel your turbo!" Like, to the point where they dropped it immediately.
Yep.
There is still a generation that missed out on the early kind of nerdy aspect of it, and all they ever saw, and might go to the grave with just the bad taste in their mouth of like the financialization and what happened. And I do think a lot of those people can be educated into understanding just how powerful this is beyond that. But then outside of that, future generations, look, these artworks are going to find their ways into video games. These artworks are going to find their way into fashion. These artworks are going to find their way into like books, history books, art books. There's already a ton of art history books. The awesome, on NFTs book that Robert Alice made is a really good example. The CryptoPunks book, there's like,
Great
all these,
acclaim.
all these wonderful like things cementing this history. And I think when we all look back, if you don't know what you're looking at and you just kind of look and you read those books and you discover it, not based on, hey, come here, you're going to make 10x, but hey, look what's like these are real people putting their real passions into this. I think that that concept of internet art starts making more and more sense, and I really have to hand it to Aaron because he's really stood by that, and I appreciate him for that.
That's amazing. On thinking like about these different institutions, are there ones that you see right now that are leading the pack and like,
oh yeah,
like, hey, we see that if we don't adopt, like we become possibly, or like there's risk on our time horizon of like who care, like obviously traditional art's not gonna just like disappear, but like are there ones that are like far more innovative right now?
Yeah, and I think the one I want to call out just right now is just like so top of mind is the Toledo Museum, because specifically not based on what you just said. I mean, I'm sure the executive director is also concerned about funding the institution, right? Like long term. So I'm not saying that can't be part of it, but to me, when I have conversations with that museum, it is truly like a true fascination around this medium, around the communities built around this medium, and not based on not, to me, it doesn't feel reactionary. A lot of the institutions feel reactionary. So, my engagement with institutions early on has been like across the spectrum, but a lot of institutions, I feel like, were not reacting. They were curious. You have to be careful as an like, I think it was one of the curators for one of the institutions told me that the museum is like one of the most trusted institutions in the world, above the church, right? Like people just trust the museum to being like honest and direct. And so you can't stake your reputation on year 2 of generative art and be like, yeah, this is gonna. The rate of adoption for digital art by the institution is completely unprecedented in comparison to previous different like mediums.
Right.
So it's actually happening at an alarmingly fast rate, even though we live in like, one day equals 1 year in crypto. And so the ones that early on, for example, the LACMA being willing to accept the last mint of the Chromie Squiggle as a whole of it, like with allowing me to create a smart contract that allowed people to sign off on it and participate in that. A lot of institutions, they don't even want that. Like they're like, okay, this all makes me kind of weird and uncomfortable. And then on top of that, the LACMA actually putting it on display, already exhibiting sometimes artwork once it's accepted takes years before, if it ever is shown in an exhibition. So I think that there's some institutions that are reacting, and I'm grateful for it because I think it's going to support all of our collectors and it's going to support all of our artists. But there's some that are really leading the way, and I think Toledo, I think the LACMA, I think the Buffalo AKG Museum, one of the earliest collectors of generative art before the blockchain even existed. And then I obviously have like a very soft spot in my heart for all the institutions that have collected a Chromie Squiggle as well, like the Moody here in Houston. So yeah, there's just a lot there. That's a whole conversation to unpack, but maybe it's important to say that the more confident you are in being right about what you're talking, I mean, I'm bullish, okay, so I'm very excited, but like I also think that the more right you think you are, the more likely that you're going to be proven wrong, because it is a new era of art. It is a new era of consumption now, especially with AI. Like everything is changing and everything's changing incredibly rapidly. And I think right now is the time to not necessarily say like, you know, what the future is going to hold, but like actually just appreciate the digital art world, digital art, things that were made with computers has, if especially if you take like the financial side out of it, has been entirely up only, and not just up only like, I mean, I'm talking exponentially up only. The dialogue that's happening with institutions,
The
at the
amount.
rate at which it's happening, the
Yeah.
amount, the people that are still here, even though it was highly people, most people entered from a speculative perspective.
Right.
Like the people that are collecting NFTs today and commenting on NFTs today, the nukes and so and so's, and you know, are probably going to be really important parts of the world of art in 10 years. Even, I'm sure they didn't sign up for that or
That
didn't know what they were
it,
getting themselves
what's
into.
crazy is that people think that the winners of all, like, again, I hate to put the financial perspective on this, but like the most historic artists are the ones that are obvious, right? It's the ones with the highest floors. Those are the artists that you want to be collecting. And you know, if the floors aren't high, then don't you shouldn't be looking at them. But there are likely dozens, if not hundreds, of artists right now. But at the highest level, there are dozens right now that will become some of the most prolific generative artists who have artwork sitting out there that you can go buy for dollars.
Yep.
Like not you don't have to go have 100,000, don't have to have 10,000, but like a couple $100, $50 maybe. Like it's just sitting there. They are creating because they love it, and we've gotten so like spooled up in the yarn of, again, the financial aspect of this, um and maybe they've built their own art blocks, and they just, you know, their own version of how to put out art, and nobody's discovered it yet, or it has a very small collector base. I honestly think that's where people should be going, as like a therapeutic like escape from the echo chambers that we're in right now.
100%. Yeah.
um are there artists that you right now are, you don't have to name it if you don't want to, but like that you're like, hey, I love what they're doing, you know, maybe they aren't like under, like, not known, but like, are there any that you like want to highlight that you think people should just take a look at? Again, not to buy, no financial advice here, but like,
Yeah. That's always really hard for me because I follow artists a lot, like really, really, and really kind of understanding like their career. I think one of the things that we have to consider also is that a lot of people are realizing what a career in art is as an artist. Like a lot of people are like, just like me, it's like, oh, I have this idea. I've been making art for a decade, but here's this idea, and now it's like I'm an artist, right? Like a lot of people weren't these. We are programmed for these things, and so I think what I'm without really kind of naming names, what I'm kind of, because there's just too many, and I would just leave people out. I think what I'm really excited about, and I think what people really need to examine based on what you just said, is that there are people here that came in 21, made a bunch of money, started a studio, weren't able to sustain a studio, especially when royalties went away, because that was like a really nice way of kind of sustaining your studio. Went back to a normal job, but have stayed and continued to build their art career. And one day those people will get to quit their job again and be artists full time again. It just didn't get to happen based on the mania that happened in 21 and 22. They're here every single, like, you know, this is internet art. The way that we connect on the internet is Discord and Twitter, etc. And they are building a career. Like we focus on the individual release, we focus on the individual platform, and you just kind of forget that like movie stars, artists, musicians, they start generally really small. Some of them get really like successful early on. Some of them take a really long time to get successful. And the beauty of it is just watching their career flourish and unfold. And you can use the price action as an index that you, if you want, you could also look at like them getting invited to do public art pieces or getting to, you know, cameo and things. Like there's just a lot of different ways. And I think what we zero in too much on the NFT, the technology still, we zero in too much on the individual project. And if you zoom out, there are some artists out there, and they're all over our timeline that are not selling works for hundreds or thousands of dollars, that are here every single fucking day doing really, really badass stuff, learning as we're learning what art is and learning what it means to be an artist in this new era of internet art, because no artist knows how to do that yet. We've got Mike Beeple, Jack Butcher, you got myself, Emily Shia, like you've got all these different people that are learning as we go, writing the playbook as we go, because there's no precedent set for
They're
how to
building the
be.
plane as it's flying. Like it's yeah.
Absolutely. And every platform is the same way, but also every collector is also building the damn plane as it's flying. And so, a little bit of empathy goes a long way, and really focusing on the people that are actually functionally building that plane in public, because that's what the internet brings us to do. Those would be the collectors that I would bet have the most exciting careers. Maybe, it's like you've got the Yahoo Google thing. It's like Yahoo was first, but Google came and like destroyed it. Like maybe I think all the early artists are going to do just fine. I think it's going to be great, but like in the weeds here, there are some people that are going to blow our minds, and they're already here, and they're already blowing our minds, but they don't have the community around their work. And when they do, it's going to be like fireworks. And I'm really here for it. I'm really excited for it.
And I think one thing that's interesting about Chromie Squiggles is, like, from a generative art perspective, we saw static art that was, black and white. Then it became, a little bit more pixelated and there's character. And then you came to yours, which was this, vibrant array, and had a lot of, I would say, like, range within the collection. But then you introduced movement. Some people don't even know this, but Chromie Squiggles move. You can click on them. I'm not gonna lie. I swear to God, when I click, I owned the squiggle for a while. And I had no idea they moved. Probably like a month or two, and my reaction when it moved was like, "Holy fuck, it moves!" Yeah. I was like, "Oh, they updated it. It moves now. That's so cool." Like, I didn't know you could change NFTs like this on the fly. Like, I was flabbergasted. But like the people that are in the weeds right now, they're thinking about what using this technology, and what using these new libraries that, some people were only using like what p5.js originally to make this art. Um, they're going and thinking about, like, how does time influence this? How do conditions? How does all these things that we really haven't seen take mainstream adoption to generative art? They're innovating.
And to the point earlier about like the generational shift, like we kids these days, I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, are generally kind of ADD. Like the things that require capturing the attention of a child today are probably not, this isn't across the board, but are probably exponentially more complex than like back in the day. It's like a bike or a scooter or like blocks. And if they're young enough, they still care about the blocks. But as they get older, it's like there needs to be other elements, right? And so whether you go from like classical music to Skrillex, and understanding like what youth is excited about and dancing about and like moving around, whether you go from, meticulously crafted Picasso to gazers that changes with the rotation of the earth, and like daily is just different. I do think that's speaking to, and contemporary art, this is art of the times, this is art of that we can make with the tools that are at our disposal today. We are speaking to a new generation of people, whether we're doing it intentionally or not, that has higher expectations to engage with something for more than 2 seconds. And so, yeah, like the movement, one of my favorite artists, Mitchell Chan, is releasing a game that's an artwork. And, it's like, can we get people to be excited about art because they're actually just playing a game, and then they just if you're old enough to have played Myst back in the day, like that was a game, but that was also like a surreal artistic like experience. And
Yep.
We haven't even started scratching the surface because we are so focused on the technology, understandably, because we're also very passionate about it. We're so focused about our bags, and we're so focused about like, and in reality, once, especially, this is why generative goods exists, is to like help people onboard beyond the technology and not having to understand it. When people start to get a feel for digital ownership, what you can do with digital ownership beyond having to understand what a seed phrase is, I really think we're going to see like a massive unlock in and also like a lowering of our of those walls that were created by a lot of the people that first discovered the technology, to understand that they might get to access a video game because they own a digital artwork, or that they might, there's just a lot of fun stuff there, and it's just a matter of time. I absolutely thought it would have happened by now. Absolutely, like in 2020, based on the growth, based on how fast things
Yep.
were moving. I take that and I own that shit. I thought it would have happened by now. And if you stand here today, and I will tell you that it may not happen for a long time, but it's going to happen. It just may not happen how we expect it to happen. It may be slower. It might be slow and steady. There might be like one killer app, one killer use case that brings everybody on. But it's going to happen. It's just not at the timeline that a lot of us expected it.
Exactly. Yep. I could not echo that point more. On the theme of innovation, and I think a good kind of point here, because I know you got to be places. On the theme of innovation, in Paris,
Shit, you have one of those Paris ones. That's awesome.
I do. I was handed this at a Ledger event, and I think we got to talk about, because you're thinking about how to move this space forward. Generative goods. What is generative goods? What's the goal? What are you guys trying to accomplish? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think starting there.
At the root, generative goods, there's two root elements. Art you can wear. I get little, like, if you imagine what my t-shirt drawer looks like, you open it up and it is dozens of shirts with squiggles and generative goods embroidered stuff and crypto punks, and like I get little dopamine hits, little micro dopamine hits every morning, trying to decide which thing that makes me as an individual or a unique person to share with the world, whether they're going to comment on it or not. So art you can wear, number one. And generative allows you to wear art that's unique to you, which is really special and important to me, obviously. But I think even deeper is this idea that I truly believe that the concept of ownership of something digital is something that humans will appreciate regardless of the technology. And they can appreciate it without having to understand the technology. Like, I want people to have that taste of, oh, this is mine, it's unique, and I own it. And I'm willing to reduce some of the maximalist constraints that I have imposed upon myself and upon Art Blocks over the last few years in order to do that. So one of them, that card, is an IYK card. That NFT lives in a shared wallet, and that card allows you to withdraw the NFT from that shared wallet into custody whenever you're ready. I don't think people need to get a seed phrase to get a $20 thing. Like, I actually think like it adds, it's just the barrier is like, we talk about wallets and onboarding, like maybe we don't even need to talk about wallets yet, right? And so trying to bring the idea of digital ownership outside of a server to someone without having to understand the blockchain is really important. And so on the Generative Goods website, which I've kind of been working on nights and weekends for the last 8 weeks, if you first log in and you have not logged in before, you actually have to flip a switch that enables Web3 mode. And if you don't flip that switch, it doesn't talk about Web3. Like, it doesn't talk about NFTs or blockchain or anything. If you tap that card, you can register your email to it. And if you register your email to it, that NFT appears in your Generative Goods profile. If you just want to collect cards, like you collect baseball cards that are all unique, you can do that. If you actually just want to wear things that are unique to you, you can buy the cards and then have us embroider them onto a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. And then if you find that you're tired of waiting for the cards to come in the mail or waiting for a pop-up, you can go and enable Web3 mode. And if you enable Web3 mode, you can mint. You can generate unique outputs, just like Art Blocks, where on-demand generative minting. And there's ways of getting those with what we call digital mint credits, where you go through Shopify, use a credit card, buy it, it automatically gives you a mint credit, and then you can mint. You have to have a wallet for that. Obviously, Privy is amazing, and so we have embedded wallets. So if you don't want to have like your own seed phrase, you can have embedded wallets. And this all just kind of comes down to the fact that when something's $10 or $20, I think custody is not as critical. And yes, that thing can be worth a lot more in the future. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for us. Let's say that generative good stuff is valuable in the future. It's great marketing for us to be able to like email our customers and be like, hey, by the way, that thing you bought for $20 is $100. You should probably do something to secure it. Hey, dumbass, that thing you bought for $20 is $1,000. You really need to do something to secure it. We can take that upon ourselves and help people get onboarded at that rate. But initially, I just want people to feel like they own something unique to them that's digital, and that's not common. And the most luxury brands in the world do that because they charge $4,000 for a purse, so they can have someone hand make every purse unique because it's $4,000. But when you can get a t-shirt or a hat or a sweatshirt that is 100% unique to you, that is corresponding to this like weird digital world that we live in for $50, that doesn't exist today. And we've done a lot of research in embroidery technology and like onboarding technology to try to simmer it down, kind of like the YouTube squiggle stream. It's just like, how do we make this as simple, as basic, as affordable, as accessible, as risk-free, so that we can actually get a feel for whether people give a shit about what we do. You can't have that conversation when everything's 20 grand. You can have that conversation when it's $20. And so that's where we're at today. We're still figuring it out. We're a year and a half into generative goods, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It feels like a real startup because we're starting with like all these ideas and then narrowing it down to one little thing. But I'm excited about it, and people seem to respond. And the posts on Twitter, or the occasional post on Twitter, like the other day, it was Max Carlin tweeted and said, I gave a generative goods card to my mom, and he was just surprised at how much he enjoyed the experience of opening something that you don't know what you're going to get, and it's an artwork and it's unique. That's what I want. I want that to happen with like tens of thousands of people that are not in crypto. And we could be more aggressively marketing in crypto, but I made a commitment that this is not like, I would love for everybody in crypto to buy one to give as a gift to someone that's not in crypto. I'm not looking to try to create another mania in crypto with this, but I do think there's an opportunity for people to participate. And not only are there not a lot of options, but options can be a little bit expensive. And so trying to make it as affordable as possible.
Incredible. I love it. I love it. Well, Snowfro, Eric, I don't know. I keep calling you Snowfro. Eric, I cannot thank you enough, man. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing this. I think this is a conversation that's more than needed, especially as the sector of art and I think the ethos of what we're doing here begins to get talked about more and more. And I think a lot of people are coming off of this craziness of, hey, just make money. And now it's like, all right, what are we here for? What is the root of this? So I appreciate you going into detail and sharing your journey and your take on everything that's happening around you.
Well, I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you. It means a lot to be on here. I know I talk a lot and I've interviewed a lot, but it's really special to be here. And I guess one thing I want to say too is just thank you to all the people out there, all the collectors, the artists, like everyone that's ever like played a positive role in this, and a lot of people have. It's hard, but like we wouldn't be here without you. And I'm really proud and excited about all these things: the Squiggle DAO, Art Blocks, the team, Generative Goods, like all the collectors. Like, thank you. Yeah, it's really meaningful.
Incredible. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you're not already, make sure you're following Eric on Twitter it's at Art on Blockchain. Yep. And also go check out everything he's made, and go check out generativegoods.com. Maybe we'll see some people wearing your stuff at the next conference. I hope so. Eric, thank you again for coming on. We'll